This is the Eye of Partridge Heel turn tutorial. This is part 3 of my little tutorial series on this particular heel flapping gusset. I've created the heel flap and the heel turn, and now I'm going to start the gusset. What you will end up doing is picking up ultimately stitches along the edge, both sides, and then connecting everything back together so that you create the foot as it comes out. So just to take a quick peek at this, if this is your foot, your toes would come in, go out, and the tube for your foot would extend further out and then would end at the toe, obviously. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing to do is knit across this heel turn row, and you want to put a stitch marker in halfway. So I'm doing the 56 count. So I'm going to go 8 over, knit over 8, put a stitch marker and continue. Stitch number 8. Stitch marker goes on, and continue with the remaining 8 that I have here. The loop of my yarn is splitting a bit here. Just gonna fix that. Okay. Now I'm going to pick up my edge stitches, and I need to pick up 14 all along this edge. And what I like to do is push this out so that I can see this inside knit stitch leg right here. Because what I ultimately like doing, I don't prefer knitting under both legs right here. When I do that, I get this hole along the entire edge, and I don't like that. That just kind of bugs me. So I figured out, for my personal preference, I'll pull this out because it just rolls in automatically. Pull it out, I'll look for this leg, and instead of going through both here, I like to go through that leg and its neighbor. That way when I pull, oops, splitting the yarn, when I pull, there's no hole. And I'll show you this way as well. You just see yarn. It creates a nice little ridge. Now on this side, I went ahead and put stitch markers just to show you how you can use stitch markers to hold your place, because sometimes you can get lost doing this edge pickup. It can get kind of fumbly if you're not used to it, and I'm used to it, but I still prefer using stitch markers sometimes. It just helps. But you can also do it without. Now I'll pick up again 14 of these edge stitches, and I'll create one extra stitch down here in this intersection to close the automatic gap that happens. So let me count down 14 from the top to make sure I know which ones I want to pick up. And when I count, I am still going with this flat knitted edge, even though I go into these stitches here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Okay. I might end up coming up here instead, because I'm not going to like that gap too much. Plus it's not even. And this is why I like to use stitch markers. That way I know exactly what I'm going to do before I just kind of dive into it. Because yeah, that's the working yarn up here. Nothing to connect to, but I've got this, and from here to here it's too much gap. You can also, if you find that you have a large gap up top and at the bottom, you can just start up here, work your way down, have your additional stitch also here. You'd have one extra stitch here, your designated amount of edge stitches picked up, your intersection stitch down here that's extra, and then you just end up doing one extra decrease. There's no right or wrong way to this. It's personal preference. Now you can pick up using just your needle, which I personally don't like to do because it can be a little fumbly. And if that's creating that hole, that means I want this one in here. And what you end up doing is pulling this yarn through. But again, I don't prefer using a needle. I like using a crochet hook. Just feels a lot easier. Okay. And again, I don't want to go through both of these. My personal preference is take this stitch, not both of them, this one and its neighbor. Grab the yarn and pull through. Take these two. I think I might have split a stitch. This is a lot easier when you're just knitting with one strand versus double. And see, when I pull on it, the only gaps I see are what are in between, which is fine because that'll tighten up. But I'm not getting a gap right here in the edge. I split the yarn. if I can get a little closer to make sure that you can see that. So again, right here is the edge. Can't go any further. So it's those two, but I prefer to take this part of the leg, not that, this with this. And they'll go under, and then right under that next stitch. And then grab that yarn and pull it right through. Let's see how many I have so far. 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I have my 14 stitches along the edge. Now if I find that, if I find that this gap in between becomes too large, I will simply add an extra stitch. Instead of having 14 plus the 1, I might have 14 plus 2, and I'll just reduce it down an extra row. Because what you're ultimately doing is, if you have, right now I have 28 stitches here along the instep, the top of the foot. I need to get this needle plus this needle plus this needle reduced down to match the same stitch count as what's on this needle here, the 28 stitches. It's this edge plus the heel turn plus this edge must equal the same amount of stitches that you have held on your instep. So let's see what I can get with this gap. And sometimes this takes me a little bit to fiddle with this, just to see how tight I can get it. And if push comes to shove and I need to, just want to make sure that I have both of those strands. If push comes to shove, I can always just sew up the gap. In the very end. So that would be my extra stitch. And if I hold that together, let's test it and see what it does. See if I even like that. It's not bad. I think I'll keep it. So, let me go back one. Got my 14 stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, plus my one extra stitch to close up this intersection as much as possible. Now what I'll do is put this crochet hook on another needle, because I'll need this hook on the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead and move it over now. These higher sharps are definitely sharp, but because I'm doubling the knitting, I'm splitting the yarn sometimes. Okay, give that a little bit of room. Now what I'm going to do is just knit straight across because I'm just doing a plain old knit stitch all the way around. A little bit of my stitches have slid off on this side, so I'm going to fix this quickly. And if you ever find that your stitches come undone, what you can do is take a crochet hook and simply hook the yarn and pull it right through the back to recreate your knit stitch and pull that up. Let me get that back on there. My double points are so short, and this material has so much stretch now, and it's slick, so it might continue to pop off, but I'll just fix it. No big deal. So again, I'm just going to knit straight across. If you happen to have a pattern, if you were doing cable work or something else that was not plain old knit stitches, you would have to do that pattern going all the way across. You would do exactly as your pattern calls for. Now I'm just going to go ahead and knit. Making sure I didn't split the yarn. Okay, that's all the way across. Just a quick tip, if you're doing double pointed needles or any needles and you find that your stitches keep sliding off, especially if you're using metal needles, wooden ones tend to grip your yarn much better than metal needles. You can always get little stoppers from Joann Fabrics or Michaels, Amazon, and they'll hook right on, they'll pop on little stoppers, little rubber stoppers. Just be aware, if you push too hard with these higher sharps, they will break your stopper. They'll just punch right through them. I've done that quite a few times, and be very careful with these just on your fingers, because when they're sharp like this, you can get a hole in your finger. Not a fun thing. I've learned that the hard way. Need to grab a cup of tea there and then continue. Okay, so again, I need to pick up 14 stitches plus one extra stitch in the intersection. And I've already used the stitch markers over here to get my 14 that I want to pick up. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. OCD in me wants to triple check because I did it probably at midnight last night, just to make sure. So this gap I need to close Just an FYI reminder, because a lot of these videos that I make are simply for myself to remember things, or they're for a friend of mine who's a beginner knitter. And if it helps anyone else, obviously, I'm happy that it helps other people. But when I do this particular intersection, there tends to be a gap compared to the other side. I don't know why this happens. Gap trolls get me all the time. Call it what you want, but it happens. I don't like picking up this bar because it makes that hole. I never do that. So I'll take this leg and see what I get. Use my crochet hook instead. Probably won't like this, but let's see what it does. Pop that through. Looks like it might give me what I want. Then again, it may not, because I can see that stitch right there, but only way to find out, trial and error. Let's see if I can get it in there without taking this marker off. I don't want to go through those two, so now I'm going to let this hang a bit. Pop this off. It was these two. There it is. Sorry, I had to go off camera to look at that. So here's the edge stitch. Can't go any further. It's all the way over. I want this leg plus this leg. I think I split that stitch. Just redo. Go under. Pull through. That's just way too big. I don't like that at all, even if I were to pull it. I might. I'm going to do something a little different. Undo all of that. Definitely want this leg instead of that leg. Let me try this. Make sure I still have that edge. Yep. Let's see how much closer I can get. That might just work. So I'm going to leave that alone. Pop off this next marker. Go into that. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and take this off all the way, or at least a little bit further up, so I can get some extra room to see. There's that edge. Hopefully that gap will tighten up when I go back through. And if not, I'll just sew it up. Life is too short to fret over gaps in my knitting. Especially when I can take a needle and a yarn and sew it up. Okay, through that. Let's see here, 1, 2, 4. Go through you two and see what that does. Nope, that was not the right spot. This is why I like to use a crochet hook, because this can get really tight. And the needle is great to get into the stitches, but once you have to pull out, that's annoying. Highly annoying. It's worse than this. And this side, for some reason, is just much tighter than the other side, and that's probably just my tension acting up. I'm pulling on that, that's why there's a gap, but once I knit it, I shouldn't see anything. So you're the extra 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, okay. Take this one out. And the reason I like to go through the two, some people go through just one leg of the knit stitch. Others like to do both. I prefer both because it definitely helps to give, for me, it feels like it gives more stability, which is what I like. And sometimes if my tension's too tight on these, my hands will start to hurt. So if that happens to you, just start stretching your hands. Take a quick little break. And take your time. Don't rush through it. Okay. Do one last count before I do that one, just to make sure you're the extra. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, yep. Okay, how am I gonna get into this? My tension was uber tight up on this one, it looks like. So I'm just gonna try and get into this leg here. Come on. I'm pulling on that to try to get some wiggle room. Which it may not want to let me. Nope. I'm just going to go through that one leg instead. And because I'm basically OCD about that little gap, it's going to drive me nuts. Let's see. Come on. Okay. It just does not want to pull through. Well, I may have to sew that little gap up then and just leave it alone. Okay, is what it is. I'll put this back on a needle. Okay. So now that I've picked up all of my gusset stitches, I'm going to work my way back around, continue to the beginning of the round, might decide to put this through the back loop. No, it's tight. Okay, this is the beginning of the round with this stitch marker. And what you're going to do now is knit all the way down to this first intersection. And that's where you'll start your gusset decreases. Now, a suggestion, instead of doing that, you can knit one foundation row just to help loosen up these stitches if they're tight, which mine are. So I'm going to go ahead and do one quick foundation round and then start my decreases. I just find it to help out with loosening these up a bit. Now, for these three, instead of knitting, I'm going to knit through the back loop to help tighten them. They're not going to be super tight, but it does help, at least I think, it helps tighten it up a little bit, and it helps to reduce any gaps as well. And I will, during my foundation round, I will knit through the back loop on both edge stitches. So about 3, maybe even 4 through the back loop on the beginning, right after the stitch marker, after the beginning of the round. I'll knit through these back loops, knit all of these through the back loop, maybe about 3 or 4 here on this needle here, the beginning of the instep. Do the same thing on this side over here, and again, knit through the back loop on the entire edge here, and a few up here on this other side of the heel turn. And it's a bit difficult to do this, not only because I'm on multiple needles, but these buggers are sharp, and I end up sticking myself in my own hand with these things. So I'm just going to go ahead and knit right in that back leg of that stitch. And I've never seen this called out in a sock pattern, at least none of the ones that I have, where it says to do this foundation row, or to even knit through the back loop on these edge stitches. I'm sure someone else is doing this. I can't be the only human on the planet doing this. But playing around with enough sock patterns, this little, I guess, trick you could call it, is something that I picked up on my own and been doing it ever since. It definitely has helped tighten up these gussets and these gaps. And again, because I'm doing my foundation row, I'm just knitting. I'm not going to do a decrease right here. If your pattern says go ahead and do a decrease right here, which mine does, you can go ahead and do that if you feel that you want to. If it doesn't impact your sock, that's fine. No worries at all. Knitting really is just playing with the stitches and getting them to do what you want them to do. The patterns are recipes. Either you can follow it all the way through, or you can tinker with it as you go along. Nope, I don't like the way that's looking. I'm going to take this off for a second so I can get this back on the loop, or on the needle. This needle is in my way, so I'm going to twist that up and get it in the back. There we go. Also does not help that these needles are splitting the yarn. There. Okay, now I'll go ahead and knit regular. always a relief when I get this heel flap and gusset done. I have tried other heels. Fish Lips Kiss. That's a $1 pattern found on Ravelry. That's not a bad heel. It gives kind of like a bullseye effect on the foot where it just kind of cups onto the heel. There's no 90-degree angle like what this one does. But it's a lot of back and forth knitting, meaning flipping. You're turning back and forth on the sock. Vending. Vending is just a Norwegian term for turn. And I took a Norwegian Selbu mitten and kofte cardigan course. So I picked up a little bit in Norwegian. I just like to use the word vending for turn sometimes. It's also known as, I believe that particular pattern, Fish Lips Kiss, is using a method of German short row turns or German short row wraps. Oops, I forgot to knit through the back loop. Take those off. Okay. Make sure these stay tight. I like the heel flap and gussets the most. Gives more cushion to me. At least I think so. But I do like the Fish Lips Kiss heel as well. I just find myself going back to heel flap for some reason, all of a sudden. Okay, now I'm gonna try to get this snug if I can, and if I still can't get rid of any gap right here, then I may just have to do a quick little sew in when the sock is complete. So I'm definitely pulling on this. And it might block out also. Something that I could do. Let's see. I do all sorts of little things to try and reduce the gaps, and that's going to be way too tight, so I'm not going to do that. Nope, I'll just have to sew it up. If you find that you just can't get rid of all the gaps, just take a quick darning needle in your yarn. No harm in doing that. And definitely use the same color as your gusset, especially if you're doing contrast heel in toe, or contrast heel at least. When you're closing up those gaps in the intersections and you have to sew it up, make sure that you use the correct color, which would be the gusset color. At least that's what I suggest. Works best for me. If you find that even this is too tight, you can always use a crochet hook to go in and out of this just as easily in this, then just pop it back onto double pointed needle. Now I have done this heel flap and gusset on a circular needle. that is possible. But I've noticed when I do double points, I definitely get less gap. In my stitches. So I'm going to make sure I go through these few up here, through this back loop. I'm just wrapping this yarn up and over. Because my needle keeps splitting this thing. Doesn't want to let me go through the back loop. Which means it might be tight enough on its own, so I'm just going to leave it be. This thing is splitting like crazy. There. Probably also doesn't help that I'm doing this on size 0 needles. And normally I do grab my 2.75 needles for socks, but I want a super dense fabric on this double point. Super dense fabric on this sock. Okay, so I'm back at the beginning of the round. Now I can go ahead and start dealing with my decreases. So I'm going to knit these 8 stitches here. And those will be tight enough. I don't have to go through the back of those loops. Actually, I'll pull stitches off. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and continue knitting through the back loop on this edge. Just to make sure that it's tightened up. This needle is in my way. I usually try to do 2 rows of knitting through the back loop on these edge stitches, and then I'll just knit plain after that. But you can see there's the gusset forming. Nice and tight, and no holes on that edge at all, which is what I like. Probably should have said this is going to be a long tutorial, but it's in real time, so it is what it is. I'm not a fan of knitting tutorials when they rush through and pause the video, or they say, okay, I'll meet you at the other side, and then it just throws me off. That happened a lot when I first started knitting. Okay. Now I just made a mistake because I forgot to put on my decrease. So again, real time. And this is what happens when I knit late at night. So I'm just going to tink these 3 back. So we're back in position. So I knitted my first row after I did the pickups on the edges. I knit 1 foundation round. I hit the beginning of the round and I knitted across, knitted down. Stop when you get to these 3 edge stitches down here. Don't do what I just did, which was knit them. Make sure that you stop at those 3 stitches. What you will do is knit 2 together and then knit 1. And on the other side, those first 3 stitches, same position down here at the bottom, you'll knit 1 and slip, slip, knit. So what I like to do, because I will get lost, I'll put something down or I'll be watching TV or something and I'll lose my place. I grabbed these little stitch markers from Etsy. There's a whole bunch with all these acronyms. One for slip, slip, knit. There it is, you can see it, SSK, knit 2 together. There's one with P2 tog, purl 2 together, BOR, beginning of round. There are all sorts of these little wooden stitch markers. So I like to use my little light bulb so I can hook this on and I can see when I get to it, I know which one to do, because in the beginning I have flipped them back and forth by accident because everything just looks identical, at least to me. So this was a nifty little thing. So I know to always do the knit 2 together here. And when I get on the other side, hopefully I'll remember to put this other one on. So I need to knit 2 together, then I'll knit 1. Move these 2 over a little, give myself some room. Put them right back on. It's always super annoying and tight on this first decrease. I just dropped that stitch, which I don't want to do. Let me take this off camera real quick. Make sure I get this full stitch on. For a beginner, I definitely do not suggest double knitting on size 0 needles, especially for socks. This can just be highly annoying, as you can tell. Okay. I may just have to knit these two through the back loop because they are twisted. So I'm just going to do that just to save my life here. I'm going to do it off camera because it's driving me insane having to do it around a camera. So all I'm doing is knitting this through the back loop. The problem is the yarn is splitting because of these higher sharps. It's so much easier to deal with thick yarn on dull needle tips versus something that will split the yarn apart. Finally, okay. So I'm taking that off after 100 years later. Knit that first stitch. I like to knit to jazz sometimes, so that's my prime. Making commercial noises. Apologies. Again, I'm just going to knit all the way across this instep. Move that over a little. Now that I'm on this side, I'm going to go ahead and put the slip knit marker on. Okay. So for this one, I'm going to knit the first stitch. And then I'm going to slip, and then knit. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and knit through the back loop on these, just to make sure these are pretty tight. And if I'm confusing you by doing the rolling, I'm just going in the front and just rolling up and over to get in the back. can do it either or, but sometimes when these stitches are too tight, as you can tell they are, I have to do this sometimes. This needle's in my way. I'm just going to knit through the front because that needle's just going to keep getting in my way. There. Okay. And then knit to that marker. Beginning of the round. Now that was round 1, that first decrease round. This next round, and it's only going to be a decrease round, and what I'm about to do, which is a plain old knit round. And then after this knit round, I'll decrease again, knit again, decrease row, knit 1 row, decrease row, knit 1 row, until I get 6 stitches on each edge stitch. That's what I want. That way it's 6, 6, and 16 to give me the 28 to match down here. And that takes a while. So I'll do maybe just one more, and then I'll stop recording. And then once I'm done and I get all the way down to the 28 stitches, I end up putting everything right back on either magic loop if I'm doing 2 socks at a time, which I am doing for this one. I'll put them right back on after I do 5 rounds of plain. Once I'm done with all these decreased stitches and I get down to 28, I like to do a foundation of 5 knit rounds, and then I'll put it back on magic loop with the other sock and then keep going until I get to the toe. And then I'll take each sock off and do the toe. Since I've already got enough knit through the back loops, I'm gonna go ahead and just knit normal. I've got enough wiggle room on these now. This back needle is just in my way. And here you can see those 2 stitches kind of jammed together. This one looping on top of that, that's the knit 2 together. I'm just going to keep on knitting. But that can get super tight, so sometimes I'll even knit through the back loop on those. That one seemed okay. And once you get a couple of rows, you'll see your intersection close up, or you'll notice if you have to go back and do a little sewing. I'll move my needles around all the time just so I don't stab myself. If you ever do find yourself sticking yourself with your needle points, because I push off, I do that where the needle is pushing in, and you end up really gouging yourself basically to the point where you make a hole and you're bleeding. You can always just cut a Band-Aid to fit the tip of your finger, or just use those tiny little round Band-Aids that you would put on your toe, for instance, especially the ones with the cushions. Since they're round and tiny, you can pop them on. That way the needle just hits the Band-Aid a whole bunch of times instead of your finger. Okay. And there's also something called mole skin that a knitter told me about, and you just cut it. It comes in one big tube basically, and you just pull it off like if you think of parchment paper or foil, and you just pull it and then cut the size that you want to fit your finger, and it just sticks right on and peels off. And it's thick, hardy fabric. And I believe people use that also on toes, if I'm not mistaken. You can find them usually in that foot aisle at like Walgreens or something, CVS. And if you happen to forget which row you're on a decrease round or a regular round, if you're not able to read your knitting clearly because it's so tight in here, let's see, that'd be the first. You can see that's a knit two together, the way it's twisting through there. If that becomes difficult, you can always pop markers on, and that way you know. Ow! Stick yourself with the needle and your stitch marker. Smart. You can always just hook it on. That way you know this is a regular. Down here is your knit two together. I'm sorry, your slip knit on this side. Your decrease. So when you come back around, you'll know to go ahead and create another one that you're doing right. Or the easiest thing, take stitch counters, and that would be round one that I've already done down here with the decrease. Round two is your plain round. And when I get back to the beginning of the round, click it back. I'm back on row one, which is a decrease round. Makes it a lot easier. So that was round 1 with a decrease, and I just did a plain old, that would have been my round 2, plain old knit stitches. So I'll go back and I'll do round 1 again, decrease. And this will get tighter on DPNs, and I don't mean just tight stitches, I mean smaller. It'll become more and more tight because you're going to end up losing all these practically. You're going to roll down to 6 stitches here and roll down to 6 stitches on this side if you're doing the 56. And it looks like, oh, thought I had lost a stitch. Nope. It can be a lot easier to do this on circulars. Whoops, and see I did it again. That's why I put those markers on, to stop myself. So when I see it, I know, stop going around and pay attention. So I'm going to knit these 2 together here. And I'm gonna have to do this off camera because it just won't let me do it any other way. There we go. So I pulled through, tighten it up a bit, and knit the last stitch. Just knit across. Okay. Here's my stitch marker, slip, slip, knit. Knit the first stitch. Now slip, slip, and then knit them together. That yarn's splitting, or the loop is not on completely. There we go. And knit right back to the beginning of the round. Normally I have all my patterns written down, so I do have this written down, but it's kind of buried in my yarn stash. So it's a little bit easier if I just make these reminder videos for myself. Grab a nice cuppa and knit with myself. That way I can just follow along and remember that way versus having to pull out my knitting book. I'm just fixing that stitch because it looked like it split a little. Okay. So I don't mind this tutorial being long because it gives me what I need when I knit. So hopefully it doesn't annoy anyone else if they're looking at this, but it's what I need for my own personal reminder. So the next round, since I just did the decreases, the next round will be a plain old knit round. Then I'll do another decrease, another knit, another decrease, another knit, another decrease, all the way until I get again 6 stitches on the 56 stitch count sock. And obviously when you're doing 64, this is different, and on 72 it's different, and on any other size it's different. And then once you're done with the decreases, this will go back onto magic loop after you have knit 5 rounds of foundation knitting. It just makes it easier to put it back onto magic loop or a circular round singular circular needle. It just makes it a little bit more clean when you have some foundation rows already done. And then after that, you knit until the knuckle in the big toe, either the bottom knuckle, which would be down in here, or the first toe knuckle, or somewhere in between. And just try it on to determine exactly where you want your toe to start, and do your basic decreased toe. And instead of doing the Kitchener stitch, which I know drives people mad sometimes, I do like to use the Finchley, I think it's called, or Finchley, where you turn it inside out and then graft it up. That way you don't get those weird bunny ears on the left and right side. At least I always did, doing a Kitchener stitch. I always get that extra little point on the left and right side, which drove me nuts. But thank goodness Hey Brown Berry on YouTube and Instagram posted how to do a Finchley graft instead of a Kitchener, which is really nice. And then you'll be done with this pair of socks and on to the next, or on to a different project. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off because this has been a really long tutorial, because it just has been. So just keep knitting.